Alright, so moving on to component install number 2. And in this chapter we'll install the I.O. panel for the motherboard, the little trim piece that tells you what each of the ports are for that goes into the case. So install that. Install the CPU in the motherboard, the RAM in the motherboard, and the Samsung 950 Pro PCIe SSD into the motherboard. So basically, put all of the components other than the GPU into the motherboard before putting the motherboard into the case. And then finally, the last step in this chapter is actually putting the motherboard in the case. First things first, let's put the I.O. interface, trim board, whatever we want to call that, pop that in. So let me reposition the camera for a second. Okay. Now match up the holes here against the configuration of the I.O. itself, so you put it in the right way up. And that's like this. Actually, it was go like what the hell? I had to lay the PC down on its side to get that in properly. So now that that trim place is in place, I'll write the case and start populating the motherboard. Time to start populating the motherboard, and at this point make sure you have the manual in hand so you follow the directions correctly. Let me grab the CPU. So we'll install the CPU. Before we do that, actually, let's kind of walk around the motherboard so you have an idea what's what. We have a couple of fan connectors, and I'll go over this in greater detail when we go to the wiring section. So let me just kind of do an overview of it, and then when we do the wiring, we'll go over it in greater detail. We got a couple of fan connectors here, typically related to the CPU. One of the ATX power connectors, 8-pin. Another one of the ATX power connectors. Some more fan, USB, a bunch of SATA ports, including some SATA Express ports here. Some more fans, and then USB, TPM, and over here is where the basically the power on, power off button, that kind of stuff is. With modern computers, motherboards, you don't have the traditional north bridge, south bridge like you had in days of old. They've folded most of the functions of the north bridge into the CPU, and what's left, and what the north bridge historically did was communicate with the higher speed items such as memory, RAM, and cache and whatnot. And the south bridge historically communicated with the lower speed stuff like USB, COM ports, that kind of stuff. But again, modern ones, the north bridge is largely integrated into the CPU, and the south bridge, well, that's this item here, is actually now known as Platform Control Hub. So that's this guy here, and actually it's got a piece of plastic on that. And if you notice, this is a heat exchanger, and then there's a heat pipe to another heat exchanger. So obviously some heat is generated here. We also have another heat exchanger here And this looks like probably some form of drivers below that. There's an additional heat exchanger here. So, and the last item right here is the PCIe SSD slot, the M.2 slot. That's where I'll be putting the 950, Samsung 950 Pro into. And that guy can get pretty hot. So we'll have to see about how I can channel air to that for cooling. Alright, so let's start with the CPU. And in the instructions, you start with this guy here. And as you see here, I am ground strapped, so I am grounded. So open that. Then that. Okay, now we get the CPU, and don't touch the top or bottom of it, just grab it by the sides, and you want to align that dot with this diamond or triangle. Actually, no, sorry. That triangle with that triangle. Dot was confusing. So that triangle with that triangle. So just lay it in there. Okay, it is in place. Now to close it up, alright, this lever comes down. Oops. Alright, so that plastic cover will pop off automatically once we have the CPU in place and latched down. So, CPU in place, that cover goes down. Then oops. This goes down. Then this goes down. And the cover comes off. I think, well, we'll leave that off. Okay. So, CPU is in. Next, we'll do the RAM. So, let me grab that. Okay, and you do want to be more careful static-wise with the RAM. That is the more sensitive of the items. Okay. Okay. Now, let me get to the RAM installation section. Okay. Here's where the memory modules are listed. And they show for a 4-module installation, you're going to use A1, B1, D1, C1. And that's the gray colored slots. So that's this one, skip one, this one, and then this one, skip one, this one. Okay? So that's that. Let me go ahead and start punching these in. Okay. So get my okay. That looks to be the right way. Just confirm. And the notch does not line up that way, but it does line up this way. So, and then that ear slap shut. So that's in. Next one. Okay, it'll be the same configuration. Okay, and open, open. Okay, and we'll put this one in first. Oh, wait a second. These go the other way. So you do have to be careful. The orientation swaps from one side to the other. Okay, and the last one. Okay, so okay, so now we have 32 gigabytes of RAM installed. Our last motherboard installation, component installation, is the Samsung 950 Pro PCIe SSD. So let me go ahead and open this guy up. Ah, there it goes. Okay, that is a small ass module. Alright, I gotta take out this screw to install it. So let me get my screwdriver. Ooh. Why did it do that? Well, let's see. Okay, so really is only one way this can go in. That's the back side, that's the top side. So it's going to go in, the notch is to the bottom. Oops. That's in. Just down. Where did I put that? There it is. Okay. And cinch that down. Not too tight. Okay. So now the motherboard is as populated as it's going to be until I put it in the case. Let me clean stuff up here, and I'm going to take the case, lay it down on its side to make it a little easier to put it in. I have to move some stuff out of the way, so I'll pause things for a moment. Okay, this is going to be a little bit of a challenge to get this in and for you to be able to see what I'm doing. But there are 9 studs that the motherboard is going to attach to. So let's slide this in. Okay, it's not quite there. Okay, see, I've got the where's my flashlight? This appears to be the hold-up. Okay, let me get some screws. Okay, I got 9 screws. Get my screwdriver. I need to put some pressure on the trim plate so that the screws line up. So I'll use my flashlight here to do that. And now that I've got one lined up, put a screw in. Okay, the rest of them should go in fairly simply. Just double check for alignment. And I am still wearing my wrist strap. Do not snug them down too tight, because you may need to kind of jiggle the board a little bit. And I apologize for the lighting here. This is not the easiest thing to see. And let me loosen this up. Looks like we're not perfectly lined up. At the top. So it looks like I'm going to have to apply some more force on this guy. Okay, here we go. So I'll just drop it in there. Get the screwdriver. Okay. Now it should go in pretty well. Of course, this one's not going to be easy to get. Might as well get my needle nose. Grab the screw. Feels like it's maybe a little magnetic. That's not helping things. Actually, that screw looks a little big. Yep, it was one of the larger screws. That didn't help. I should point out that the inventory listing that Asus provided for the motherboard lists package of screws. Not what type of screws they are and where they go, but just a package of screws. Very helpful. Okay, that one's in. That one probably going to need a Phillips head or the needle nose to get it in. Okay, 2 more screws. I'll get them all in and then I'll go around and lightly tighten them up. Don't want to apply too much force on it. Crack the phenolic or the board. That would not be good. Are you kidding me? Are you frickin' kidding me? Alright, let me get this one in first. That one dropped right in. Cables a little bit. Alright, that's in. Okay, last screw. Let's see if I can drop this guy in. Doesn't look like it. Not clear to me why they did it this way. Let's see if I can finagle that around with a screwdriver. It looks like it. Okay, all the screws are in. So let's go around tightening them up. I'd start in the middle. That's tight enough. That's tight enough. Tight enough. Start in the middle. Tight enough. And in the middle. Okay. So, motherboard's in. Next step is the GPU and the GPU cooler. Alright, so we had some problems. I had some problems putting the I.O. panel into the case. For whatever reason, it was a little bit of a pain in the ass to get it in. So I shut the video off, got it in, and turned it back on. A number of times when talking about the motherboard, I used the term heat exchanger. I should have used heat sink. Confuse those terms often, but yes, heat sink should have been the term I used. Installing the CPU, you notice I fumbled around quite a bit with that because, you know, you didn't want to mess up on it. And one of the things that confused me was the dot that's on the CPU. And most chips, most semiconductor devices have dots on them that indicate orientation. But that's not the mark that you use. You use a little triangle on the board side of the CPU, so just be careful on that. Also, you'll notice that I kind of fumbled with the levers in locking it in place. The manual doesn't go into a whole lot of detail. It's just a couple of very brief pictograms showing you what to do. And what I missed, and I could see it, but I didn't want to force it, was that you kind of have to push the cover down so that the loop on the cover can be captured by the loop on the lever arm. Because if that's not down, the lever arm won't catch it and it won't lock it in place. So, where are we now? Okay. Oh yeah, double check the orientation of when you're inserting the RAM. You have those notches on the card edge of the memory module, and just line it up with the key that's in the slot. And also make sure that the little latch ears are open in the slot to put it in. And finally, on that, when you move from one side of the CPU to the other, it appears to be pretty common that the orientation swaps from one side to the other. So pay attention to that. Lastly, when removing the hold-down screw to install the 950 Pro on the motherboard, when I unscrewed it, not only did the screw come out, but the short standoff below it come off. So when I installed the 950 Pro on the motherboard initially, I put the board in and then screwed the screw with the standoff on top of it. Later on, I realized that can't be right, so I removed the standoff and screw, and I had to force to get the screw out of the standoff, then put the standoff on the 950 Pro SSD on top of that, and then screwed the screw down. So just be careful about that stuff, and don't put a lot of torque on your screws. That's one reason not to do that.